Hello, welcome to the show today. Now, as I've been promising you for some days, my guest today is David Icke, and thank you for coming, David.
Pleasure.
Very good of you. Now, David, where do you start with you, really? I know all I have to do is push the button and you'll be off. But you're the author of a lot of books. Your latest book, Children of the Matrix, which has just come out. But you started off, didn't you, in a much different way. You started off as a journalist.
Well, I started off actually as a desperately shy child in Leicester, in a big council estate where my mother still lives, and same house. And eventually, because nothing ever happened to me in my mind that was any good. All the good things in life happen to other people, and that's how I was. You know, I used to cross the. My mother still tells the story. I used to cross the street to avoid saying hello to people. That was how shy I was. And then I used to play football in the playground at playtime. And one day the teacher came over to me and said, "Would you have a trial for the school team?" Now, and it blew me over.
Yeah, I imagine.
I knew the trials were coming, but me have a trial for the school team? I'd never get in. That doesn't happen to me. But I had a trial, and I got in, and that was the start of my recovering self-esteem. And it's amazing to look at myself today, given how I started off on this life.
Yes.
49 years ago, a terribly shy little boy.
And then you became a professional footballer, didn't you, at one point?
Yeah, it's really strange, really. Whenever I've set a goal for something, ludicrous as it may have appeared at the time, like, I mean, the number of people who want to be professional footballers to the number of people that become them is very, very small. But I decided after that school trial, when I got in the team, I want to be a professional footballer. You know, my dad said, "Oh, you want to get your head around that, mate?
Oh, they do that, don't they?
You're never going to live in kicking a ball about, mate."
They do that. They do that, parents.
Yeah, but I just knew I'd do it. There was no reason why I should do that, but I knew I'd do it. I knew I'm going to be professional.
That's
footballer.
why you did it, because you knew you'd do it.
And you know, I had a series of lucky breaks and stuff like that, and became a professional footballer. But at the age of 21 eventually, but I mean it was a build-up over a number of years. Arthritis finished my career, and I had to change tack, and that's when I went into journalism. Because when I was told that if you continue playing football, you'll be in a wheelchair, which I didn't believe either. I thought, what do I want to do now? I want a front grandstand. And even fewer people front grandstand, because there's one person does it every week, you know.
Yeah.
And I started on the journey of that. But again, I knew I was going to do it. I didn't know why. I knew I was going to do it, and I did that. And eventually, you know, worked for the BBC as a presenter through the 80s. Got increasingly interested in environmental things, which I've really been interested in since I was a kid. And I decided I was going to join this Green Party thing, which had just changed its name for Ecology Party. And in a matter, I don't know exactly what it was, but no more than 8 to 9 weeks, I went from, which was not my intention, from being joining the party as a member, becoming a national spokesman for it. Ludicrous. And that story alone is amazing, the way it happened. And then, towards the end of the 80s, some very strange things started happening to me.
Right.
And they led me on a completely different journey. But you know, I was talking in a chat with someone the other day. I seem to have changed direction so many times in 49 years, but in fact, it's been the same direction. And you know, it's very clear that if you follow the flow of life rather than resisting it, we step from one part of the journey to another.
We certainly do, yeah.
And while those two parts may seem on the surface to be very different, they're actually fundamentally connected. And when I look back at what I'm doing, or look at what I'm doing now, which is exposing how few people control the world, and the suppression of spiritual knowledge and all these other things, all the different things in my life, whether it's journalism, whether it's politics, whatever, have given me fundamental insights necessary to make what I'm doing now easier to understand, because I've experienced some of it.
Yeah, when you look back, you can see the pattern, can't
Absolutely,
you? You can
yeah.
see it's like a jigsaw puzzle.
And the other thing is that, you know, we tend to forget, and I'm as much as anyone else, I have to sit down and say, look, start thinking again. We forget that the good things that happen to us, if we take the sequence back, often results from bad things that have happened to us.
Yes.
And you know, the trick is meeting the good, bad, and indifferent, as someone once said.
Oh yes,
as the same imposters.
famous poem. Yes.
Yeah. Rudyard Kipling. It makes very good cakes, by the way. Not just a good poet.
Yes, so I hear. Try to stay off of myself, but.
So my journey has been, you know, one of uncovering secrets, if you like, with very journalistic, three-dimensional research. But alongside that, and fundamentally connected to it, has been my own spiritual journey.
Because you had a kind of a strange paranormal experience, didn't you? That triggered all this.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the term paranormal.
No, neither do I.
Yeah,
but you have to put
I know
some
what you
word
mean,
to it.
because nothing happens that isn't normal. I mean,
That's right.
Nothing happens that is not natural, because, you know, it's just that the so-called paranormal experiences are just within laws of physics and energy and what have you, that mainstream science hasn't yet accepted to exist.
That's right, and because they don't have the knowledge to measure them.
And also, the structure of science is to perpetuate a very narrow vision of possibility. And any scientist who tries to break out of that, of course, has that structure jump upon it.
Yes.
So it's like a defense mechanism for a certain view of possibility, when so much more information is around that you know, people never get to hear about, because mainstream science rejects it. You know, the same mainstream science, incidentally, that going back a few centuries told us the Earth was flat, and also told us thalidomide was safe. So I don't think I'll take too many lectures from mainstream science on what's right and what's wrong, thank you very much, and what's possible and impossible. But you know, one of the greatest, or perhaps the greatest point in my journey that's interconnected with the work I'm trying to do, was that enormous ridicule I had in the early 1990s, because that set me free of the prison that most people live in.
Yeah, because once that's happened, there's nothing more to worry about, really, is there?
Yeah, I mean, the point is that I kind of began to understand that the prison that most people live in, that limits us in terms of our infinite potential, is the fear of what other people think.
Absolutely.
It means that when you concede your uniqueness of thought, of lifestyle to that, you're not living your uniqueness. You're not living your spin on life. You're living someone else's.
Absolutely, yeah.
And being imprisoned by someone else's belief. And, you know, like I said, when I was a kid, growing up, you know, I was frightened of my own shadow. Again, so many people go into the media. It was interesting, I was talking to some people on a chat show and a program recently, including people like Petula Clark and others. And the time and time again, you find that these people that are really out there in the media and entertainment, they were terribly shy kids. Yeah. It's extraordinary the number of times that comes up.
I was.
Yeah. So when I went through that massive ridicule in the early 1990s, you know, that period of my life, which I certainly didn't understand at the time, and has quite an amazing story behind it, I have to say. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was not so much, in fact, it was nothing to do with what I said and did at that time. It was everything to do with what I said and did had in terms of consequences for me. I couldn't walk down any street in Britain at that time without being ridiculed by most of the people. I mean, I lived my life to the sound of close or distant laughter. And when you're in that situation and you turn the telly on, they've only got to say my name and they get a laugh. Without anything else, one of two things happen. Either you go to pieces,
yeah,
or the waters break, and you step out of this prison that certainly in my case, and I guess in the case of everyone else, you only realize you've been in once you've stepped out of it. This prison of living your life and speaking your truth on the basis of what you think is acceptable to other people's beliefs. Yeah. And I could not do what I'm doing now, exposing some and going into some very, from, you know, general reality point of view, very bizarre areas, if I still had that fear of what other people thought. I couldn't do it. And it was the most painful part of my life. It was the most shattering part of my life.
It must have been terrible.
But when I look back, it was the most important part of my life, because I moved from into a state of mind, a state of emotion that allowed me to continue the journey. Because so many people say to me around the world, who, you know, give me information, and, you know, I meet, I know this is true, and I'll tell you what I know about it, but don't mention my name, for God's sake. And sometimes it's through fear of the consequences in, shall we say, a violent way. But a lot of the time, it's fear of consequences, of fear of ridicule.
People live their whole lives really now, don't they, worrying about what other people are going to think of them, and doing things just to impress other people. We're going to take a little break now, but we'll be back in a couple of minutes. See you in a minute.
That's what they're there for, isn't it? Yeah. Doesn't take much to do your bit for the environment, you know.
Are you doing your bit to fight local pollution? Call 0845 786 86 86 and find out more.
Don't step in the crack.
Do you have what it takes to be a foster carer? If you care, call 020 7972 3900 and find out more about fostering.
This is the car equipped for today's discerning driver. The car with ergonomically contoured seats and a state-of-the-art hi-fi. The car that will whisk you from London to Land's End on a single tank of petrol. This is the car that wasn't fitted with locking wheel nuts, deadlocks, security.
Don't treat car security as an optional extra.
Crime. Let's bring it down.
Hello. So David, we got to the point we were saying where you'd gotten past caring about what other people thought, and like we said, people generally do tend to live their lives all the time watching what they do, what they say, what they buy. They buy things because other people buy them. They buy things because other people might be impressed with what they own, and it's all madness, isn't it?
Well, you know, my feeling is everyone to their own, and I have absolutely no problem with people you know, not questioning, not thinking outside the norms. I have no problem with that at all. They have every right to do that. Who am I to say, you must think, you must do this?
True.
What I have a problem with is when those who choose to do that insist that everyone else does the same.
Yeah, that's what happens as well, yeah.
Because once that happens, and this is fundamental to appreciating how a few people control the direction of the world, once you do that, you not only become symbolically a sheep to these norms, just following the one in front without question, you also become the sheepdog for all the other sheep. And, you know, if people give their minds away and don't think or question, that makes it easier for a few to manipulate the mass of the people. It doesn't make it easy. The lines that's crossed to make it relatively easy is when those who have conceded their uniqueness to these norms that we're given then insist that everyone else does the same, because then the masses are policing each other. And the few can only control the many if the many police each other. And we do it in so many ways, not least the way the basic structure works is norms are set in society. What is right, wrong, moral, immoral, good, bad, possible, impossible, sane, insane. And the vast majority of people live their lives within those norms because they just accept them. This is life. This is how it is, mate. Everyone knows that. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. But then if anyone within that mental and emotional sheep pen, if you like, starts to challenge it, starts to question it, starts to speak and live outside of it, it's the other people within it that jump on them. You know, when people are thinking, shall I, shan't I say what I really think? Shall I, shan't I live my life as I really want to? They're not thinking, if I do, what will Tony Blair think?
No.
They're thinking,
right.
What will my mother think?
Yeah.
What will the guys down the bar think? What will the people at work think? And if we're going to live in a world of true freedom, first of all, we have to set ourselves free. So we cease to be a sheep. But we also have to set each other free. And, you know, for me, three things would transform this world because of everything that would come from them. One, we as individuals step out of the fear of what other people think, and therefore express our real thoughts, our real sense of truth. And we live our truth rather than someone else's. At which point we cease to be a sheep. If enough of us do it, we cease to be a herd or a flock. Secondly, we allow everyone else to do the same. You know, without, you know, he thinks different from me, call the police.
Yeah.
Everyone will want to do it. You know, and at which point we cease to be a sheepdog. And suddenly people feel okay to express their uniqueness rather than thinking, oh my goodness me, what will people think? And thirdly, the balance point for me, no one imposes what they believe on anyone else. So always respecting free will, because we don't respect it now.
No.
And for me, if we could start to move in that direction and be at peace with people being different from us, you don't believe that? Okay, well, let's have a beer. Let's talk about something else. Or I don't mind. As long as you don't impose it on me, you can believe what you like. I don't mind on me. Then we start to have the free flow of information, the free flow of possibility. Because, you know, as I've seen, as I've uncovered this global conspiracy, you might call it, for the centralized control of the planet, which we're moving to rapidly through things like the European Union and what have you. The main problem we have is the free flow of information. And we have a microscopic amount of possibility given to us through the mainstream media.
Oh, absolutely.
And therefore it imprisons our own sense of possibility.
You've only got to get a small positive story, or try to, into the national press. You can't do it. You try and send something into these people, they don't get it, they don't receive it, the right people. There are thousands, millions of stories, news items that never ever get to the public eye.
There's also an incredible amount of scientific research, even on that three-dimensional level of science, which demolishes so much of what we think is real. I mean, how many people know that we don't live in a world, we live in a frequency range? That's all we do. You know, when we're looking through our eyes now, we are seeing only that which exists that our physical senses can perceive.
Yeah.
Outside of that is infinity. But the whole of mainstream official society, be it science, politics, whatever, is based on the fact that what our physical senses can perceive, which is a tiny, tiny fraction of all that exists, is actually all that exists.
It is, yeah.
Therefore, even on that level, we are living in a prison of our physical senses. I mean, what we're looking at here, and what everyone sees around them, is only that which reflects light. All matter or mass that doesn't reflect light, our physical senses can't see. Now, according to physicists, of the matter that has been identified to exist in this universe, our physical senses can perceive a maximum of 10% of it. So even according to mainstream science, 90% of matter that exists in this universe, we cannot see.
So it stands to reason the same applies here.
Well, and also, we're only talking there about, you know, a fraction again of the infinity that exists and the infinity that we are. And so, if you are going to entrap people into a situation where you can control them, you have to disconnect them from an understanding of the nature of who they are, the nature that fact that this body is merely like what I call a genetic spacesuit. It is something, a vehicle that we have to work through. Our consciousness has to work through to experience this frequency range.
Right.
Because consciousness is vibrating to a much higher frequency than this world that we see. And if my consciousness didn't wear an outer body, I couldn't pick that up.
No.
So if I'm going to interact with this frequency range we call the physical world, I have to have this body, which and that's what it's here for. But if you can entrap people into believing that this is what they are, and this world is all there is, and what they're experiencing, be it a road sweeper or an airline pilot, is not just an experience, that's what you are, then you can get multidimensional infinity, which is what we are, to see itself in tiny, tiny areas of possibility. So you suppress people's understanding of the magnitude of who they are, the genius in all of us that is waiting to be accessed, and you turn multidimensional infinity into a four-legged animal from which we get wool. And this is how I started this journey, you know, uncovering this, what has become a political, financial, media conspiracy and all that stuff. It actually started when I had this massive awakening, which happened in Peru, which is an amazing story in itself, just before I went public in my turquoise period. And I came across this spiritual information that questioned both the situation that most people are given is, you've got a choice, mate. You can either believe that this religion or whatever is telling you what life's about, or you can believe what science tells you, which is far more credible, you know, because they have letters after the name of the great university. And they're telling you that you're a cosmic accident which through some chemical reaction had consciousness for a few seconds or 100 years and then goes back to oblivion.
The biggest coincidence that ever happened.
Now, that's basically the choice that people are given through their life. When this experience happened to me, I started seeing all this other spiritual knowledge, all these other explanations, which made complete sense, and suddenly mystery started to dissolve. I asked myself, I've been an out there person. I've been a journalist. I've been this, I've been that. Why haven't I seen this before? Where is this stuff? Why isn't it in mainstream society so we can all see it and have access to it and therefore make a choice on whether we accept it or not? We're just getting this or that. And I started to, therefore, start on this journey of finding out initially why this information was suppressed, why it wasn't in mainstream society, why it wasn't taught in the schools as a possibility. This is another possibility of life, and who was doing it. And from that, the road widened into this massive global thing. But even now, the banking conspiracy, the money conspiracy, the political conspiracy, the media conspiracy, all that, which is actually one conspiracy, its absolute foundation is the suppression of spiritual knowledge and the nature of who we are and life itself. Because when you start to access multidimensional consciousness, which we all have, you don't look through the eyes and hear through the ears in the same way anymore. When I went through this massive spiritual transformation in the early 1990s that blew my head off, when I came through it, it took about 3 months, I was looking at the same world, I didn't see the same things.
No.
So the suppression of the spiritual knowledge and the nature of life and who we are and the true magnitude of who we are is at the very foundation of how a few control billions, and that's why it's so important to talk about.
That's what we'll come to in the next part. I mean, I had a sort of similar experience in a way in that I had a big spiritual awakening and rushed out to share it with everybody, and a lot of people said, "You're mad," you know. Not quite on the scale that you did here, but I did have a sort of similar thing, so I know what you're saying. And yes, I do see the world differently. It's changed my life out of all recognition. I've tended to keep it more on a personal level at the moment, but I think it's going to grow. But we'll come back in a couple of minutes and we'll ask you, who does rule the world?
Okay.
See you in a minute. Bye.
Getting your kids confident with numbers
How much is that then?
Another 10 would make 20.
is as easy as
1, 2, 3.
How many points ahead am I now?
Even if you pop black, you're still 5 behind.
We've driven 6 miles, we've seen 12 Chelsea scarves. How many Chelsea fans per mile is that?
Is it 2, Dad?
Yeah, that's right.
It's just too many for me.
make the time you spend with your children count.
I have found peace, free from the daily pursuit of gain. Mind pure, body cleansed. I fear nothing but the night, for the night brings sports cars. A roadster, the yin of performance, the yang of design. Oh, Mama!
The new Toyota MR2 Roadster.
Getting your kids confident with
How many
numbers
spots has she got? Let's count them.
is as easy as
1, 2, 3.
Okay, Jamie, we take our 3 videos at £1.50 a night. How much will that be?
£4.50, Dad. But where do they all have this curly in them?
Your mum likes it.
How long before we go on holiday, Mum?
6 weeks, darling. How many days is that?
42, Mum.
Well done.
make the time you spend with your children count.
11, 12, 13, 14.
Hello. So David, a lot of people are going to say, so who does rule the world then? How do you know who it is? And what can we do about it?
Well,
there's 3 big questions to start off with.
Well, we've already kind of talked about what we do about it. You know, there's 2 ways of approaching a problem. There's to find a solution, or there's to remove the cause of the problem, which is usually infinitely more sensible and intelligent and effective. And removing the cause of the problem is bringing an end to people policing each other and giving people a hard time for the crime of being different. Because the whole manipulation is dependent upon that. And when that's gone, the manipulation's in real trouble. So it's like everything, you know. This world is merely a physical expression of us. You know, we could, if we choose to be loving to each other, we live in a loving world.
Yeah, I mean,
If we choose to be hateful, we live in a hateful
if
world.
people accept different beliefs, different colours, different cultures.
Sure, because